This is a Pyramid One International Network presentation. Hi, and welcome to the Bob Charles Show right here on Pyramid One Radio Network. Let me tell you about the guest coming up. His name is Arnold V. Strong. He's a colonel. He's retired. He brings 3 decades experience as a communications strategist, management consultant, and operator. His diverse experience spans enterprise-level public, private, defense, academic organizations, and technology startups. A veteran of combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, the U.S. Army Ranger also led peacekeeping training and operations in Bangladesh, Egypt, and Guyana. A former executive committee member of the publicly traded company. Strong was also CEO of Portland-based Bright Neighbor and the founding communications director for Deep Current, a venture-backed Los Angeles-based artificial intelligence startup. He serves on the boards of several veteran-focused nonprofits, like Unified Earth Network. Unified Earth Network is a Bahamian-based technology company whose values encompass inclusion for all global citizens, utilizing its decentralized blockchain 3.0 platform. But let's go a little further. Arnold Strong is a humanitarian, communications strategist, management consultant, and visionary who serves on several veteran-focused nonprofits to help humankind around the world. This tropical season has been brutal for the South. First, Hurricane Florence, a Category 2 hurricane when it hit land, ravaged North Carolina, then stopped, causing serious rain that flooded the entire area. Now, Hurricane Michael, a Category 3 hurricane, is hitting Florida's panhandle. Anyone that's seen any of the pictures, it leveled areas of the panhandle, just north of the studio. Then it continued through Georgia and parts of the Carolinas. With all this flooding and devastation over such large areas of southern U.S., humanitarian rescues are seriously run thin. Supplies, builders, and more are needed immediately, like yesterday, to help clean up the areas impacted. Those affected could see several months before their lives are back to normal. Now, it says, to everyone listening, it says several months. If you've seen pictures of the devastation in that area, just north of the studio, you would cry. It is that bad. It says several months. It'll take several months to get what was blown away off the ground. However, what can we do to help? That night, with my guest, my honored guest, Colonel Arnold V. Strong. Hey, welcome to Pyramid One Radio and my honored guest, Colonel Arnold Strong. Hi, Colonel.
Bob, it's really great to be on your show with that introduction. It was fantastic. I got to listen to it now.
You're very welcome. You know, I tell you something. I have been through everything about you. I really have. Just so you know, I mean, this is not a CIA, cover-up or anything. I really, really did. You're amazing. You really are. And the things that you're doing, one of the reasons why I got in touch with you really quick is because this is foremost in my mind, because I was here, right here, in this studio, when IRMA went over my head last year. We moved from South Carolina, from Charleston, South Carolina, to Lakeland, Florida. And when we moved here, we said, that storm's, don't worry about it. They're saying it's off the coast, no problem. 3 days later, within 72 hours, we had, I mean, there were people's houses going up the block, right past here. So, I mean, I know similar to what those people lost. I mean, those people were, Sandy, take another storm that's similar to it. Sandy, I owned a house 1 block from the water. So I was in the exact same place as those people.
Wow.
But 3 months after I moved out and went to Charleston, South Carolina, Sandy hit. So the only thing that stood on the whole area was my house and the house next door. They were both built by the same building, and they were ranch houses, but they were facing sideways. They were facing so that the water went around them, not into them.
Wow.
So that's the only thing that saved it. I mean, we had houses. We had antique, beautiful, big houses all around us. And when I saw pictures of the area, it was flattened, just like Florida, the Panhandle. So what I'm not seeing, and possibly you have some insight into this, what I'm not seeing is, for the last couple of days, I have been over every single news channel you can think of, including BBC and a few others. You don't hear anything about what's going on in Florida anymore. It's gone.
Right.
It's like they forgot them. It's like, okay, these people are walking up and down the street with no homes and everything else, and that we'll just, they'll be okay.
Right. Yeah, and the nonstop, 24-hour news cycle just moves on to the next crisis or the next political, challenge, or the next local news story, or the next, person in a bank robbery, and really sort of diverts attention from the more meaningful, important, sustained action that we have to deal with in the wake of crises like this.
Doesn't it kind of get stuck in your throat, though? I mean, it's like, it's drives me nuts.
Bob, I'll tell you, you gave a little bit of that background. I had been a regular Army officer for a decade. I got out when I moved to Portland, Oregon. And then I got back in after 9/11. I became the spokesman for the Oregon Army National Guard. And just really within months of my return from Iraq in 2005, of course, Hurricane Katrina tore through the Gulf. And really, we were at Ground Central there in New Orleans. And the challenges were it was so dire. It was so striking, to be there in the French Quarter in downtown, where all of the localized and international and global media were headquartered, where the water was about ankle deep.
Oh.
It wasn't a lot of challenge. It was ankle deep. But it was, and people were selling their beers. They were warm, but people were still continuing the whole, downtown New Orleans gig.
Right.
When we just realized, hey, I would go door to door to media trailers and just say, hey, can I bring you to the 9th Ward where people's streets are actually now rivers, and they're on top of their roofs trying to escape the hell that they're living in? Because this isn't news, what's going on here in downtown. Right. What's news is what's going on in the 9th or less, really stratified, less popular, and also, more, lower middle class, and lower class, housing and rural, semi-rural populations inside the city. Just it was really horrific to see the damage that. Then everyone just wanted to focus on the crime and focus on, issues that were tangential to the real damage of getting that city back on its feet, getting proper relief. And that's really where, in tying it to the subject of where we're at now with blockchain, I think that ultimately we're stepping into an era where we're going to have an awful lot more capability to deliver services in a much better managed, much more logistically appropriate manner, et cetera.
I remember just going over all this information about storms. There was an old man sitting on. This was in New Orleans, and we have another host that's down there in that area. So I mean, she lived it, and there was an old man sitting on a roof, with his dog for days until somebody came over his house and took him off with a helicopter. I mean, days. Nobody, I mean, come on. It wasn't. Florida, I think, is a bigger area that got hit than Katrina. Katrina was more or less centralized in one area that was below sea level. And, of course, the people's living rooms were full of water up to the ceiling. So people that were living in a house, they had to go to second floors. Some of them had to go, I mean, some of the houses were so low that they had to put holes in their roofs and crawl out the holes in the roof.
Absolutely.
To get up on the top. Yet, still, it took days in some cases to get them off the roofs. Now, in Florida, they were a little bit lucky because so many people did evacuate and listen. But there were so many that weren't that smart.
Right.
And that's why there were people now who lost their lives in those things. A lot of people now, we see water all the time. But I'm a boater, and I mean, you got the background too. I mean, I know what water can do. I've seen what water can do. I can see what a thunderstorm on the water can do. So just imagine 150-mile-an-hour wind coming in with the water with it. Not behind it, not in front of it, but with it. I mean, this thing will knock you, 6 inches of water will knock you on your butt.
Yeah. Oh, well, and then like you mentioned, the guy up there on the rooftop, I mean, it gets even more horrific. I mean, in one case, when we arrived, within a week of the hurricane hitting, we had an entire brigade task force come from Oregon all the way directly to New Orleans. I mean, we had elements of human remains that would just be there in the street or at a gas station that weren't dealt with and weren't mitigated, and they were going to places that were getting a lot more media attention, and we couldn't get, I mean, in the poorer neighborhoods, we couldn't get just the basic relief services until I finally, I literally, as I was a major at the time, I went and grabbed the local police chief and just said, hey, I am trying to set up an operations center for my soldiers, and we have human remains that are decaying. I have called your police department. I have spoken to several of your officers 6 times over the last 6 days. In 6 days, a human body left in the sun is not a good thing. We had literally poncho liners around it and everything with bricks around it. It was just horrific, and we finally got the services we needed. But yeah, the challenge is that, and I don't want to dwell too long on that because it's a horrific subject, but I think that the key is that information and matching information needs to services that are available and making sure that we mitigate between the locations, the supply chain, and the information, the data, if you will, to match those services is ultimately the future of disaster relief, and certainly what we hope to have an element of our company perform in working inside the blockchain, what we call blockchain 3.0.
Well, you just hit the nail right on the head. It's communication. How communication is used, how it is dealt with, one way or the other. For instance, the Panhandle, they lost all their cells. Right. Why? Why wasn't there automatic, generators with each one of those places and that they came on, that kicked on automatically and kept themselves going? Nobody could get in touch with anybody. Anybody in the area, that was it. Cell phones didn't work, telephones didn't work, wires didn't work, electric was out. You couldn't go up and down the streets and that because of the blockage of the streets and that with buildings, not trees, whole buildings were in the middle of the street. I mean, I saw some of the drone pictures and that came out of there. I was astounded. I mean, how can you, just not, I mean, really seriously, we have troops all over the United States. We have bases all over the United States. Why didn't somebody just pull some kind of a lever somewhere and just have everybody go to one place at the same time?
Well, so that's an interesting dilemma right there, and that gets into some of the lessons we learned out of, in my experience, Katrina back in 2005, is the real challenge is the Posse Comitatus Act, and realizing, not a challenge, it's actually there for a very good reason, but realizing the non-use of federal troops in the homeland unless it's, under the control of what we call Title 32, which is the National Guard. The National Guard is really one of the core missions of the National Guard is to be there for the state. The National Guard is controlled by the governor until federalized, whereas Army Reserve or reserve assets or regular assets, be they Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, they're federal controlled. So you've got to have, in that circumstance, in order to use those federal facilities even, you've got to have it under the command and control of a Title 32 or state-controlled asset like a governor. We ran through that a lot with Hurricane Katrina. There was a lot of fixes to that challenge that the George Bush administration sort of helped resolve. But it also got, some regular Army elements into a little bit of hot water because we're trying to overreach. And the National Guard was pretty much the element working directly for the governors that could actually mitigate those. So it is definitely a challenge and something that, we've got to figure out a workaround.
So here's one that came up from one of the listeners, because, I've had this thing up, for the weekend, and the weekend I've had things not all over media that we were going to talk about this. One of the things that they had said rang true, in a sense. You're talking about troops can't be used, federal troops can't be used because of an act that was put out how many years ago? It was a while ago. 20 years ago, 25 years ago?
Well, the Constitution, it's ultimately the Posse Comitatus Act. It's like it's codified into our founding documents.
So we can't have all those troops, more or less military, go in and save the lives of people that are national people of this country because we're not under attack.
No, I think that just to
situation.
Just to reframe that. To make sure that I'm understood. Each state has a National Guard. Yeah. Each state has troops available to that state under the command and control of their respective governors. Mm-hmm. The difference in the U.S. Code of Title 32, which is state-controlled, versus Title 10, which is federal-controlled. And if you want to use federal assets, they must be under the control of a Title 32 agent. So what that means is just that so long as those federal, like, for example, we had challenges because the 82nd Airborne was immediately deployed down to the streets of Katrina. That was a major fiasco because they had to then be under the command of National Guard assets if they were going to be used in any relief type operation. It was just a real challenge. So there is that capability and that capacity. They just have to mitigate the proper quick turns so that you can institutionalize. Again, going to my current subject matter expertise, or certainly what I'm developing out in blockchain, is that the more you manage that database, the more you enable instantaneous decision making to happen, the more you can better get the right services and the right people at the right place for the right purpose.
It still comes down to me. It's like communication. It's just handing off the responsibility from one agency to another agency and saying, look, I don't have enough to do it. Help me.
Yeah, really, it's like in disaster relief operations and missions, it's unclear information. It's lack of communication or unclear information that really, from multiple different sources, that really hinders the fast and efficient coordination of that help, that relief operation. And truly what the blockchain is, if the blockchain is ultimately where the data is managed and stored and fed into a console or dashboard or decision-making, process, whether that's artificial intelligence or that's going through a basic system that a lot of the federal government uses. The blockchain allows you to connect several independent systems of record with different parties and offers transparency of that over the asset needs and eventually ensure that help is provided without delay. And so it literally is just, if we look at the blockchain as more of a truth ledger, as a place where information is validated to be exactly where and what it is supposed to be, there's less error in communication in that sort of system. And certainly that's a field of expertise that we certainly want to help out with at Unify Earth. That's certainly not our primary focus, but it is certainly something that our blockchain will be used for well into the future.
Let me read something here. It says, I'm going to read this right off your information that was sent to me.
Yeah.
It says that you, Arnold Strong, of Unify Earth, is here to discuss this in detail by answering. And now, here's one of the questions. With two devastated areas from hurricanes spanning thousands of miles, what will this do first? Response teams and charities that help with tragic situations. Now, when I read something like this, we have in this area right now, I'm in Central Jersey, Central Florida, I mean, and we are sending water, some non, food that can't go bad in any condition, all that stuff up there. What is, I mean, you're more close to the federal side of this. You get more information about governmental supplies to these places. We've got churches all over down here that's sending, I mean, people are filling up station wagons and vans and everything else and then going up there. I mean, I don't mind what they're doing, but in my own mind, it's not enough. There should
Right.
be set. There should be. I mean, there should be 16, 17, 18, 20 trailer trucks full of this stuff going up there. There's not 5 people that are sitting down for dinner. I mean, a van. What are you going to put in there? A bunch of towels and paper. Toilet paper.
Yeah, and I think that, it's interesting because, again, I will echo, I mean, I've been retired for 2 years, so my tie to, the federal decision-making process is certainly based on my legacy knowledge rather than, knowing, contemporary circumstances or conditions on the ground.
Good enough. We'll take it.
Yeah, but given that, I think that, we work very much in sync with what are known as the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations has sort of worked with. Well, the 194 nations have actually recognized that these are 17 goals that we can all sort of align towards. The last one of those goals, 17, is partnership, is figuring out that there really can be public-private partnerships. We think that we can better manage that by putting it on the immutable ledger that is the blockchain. Now, whether that is us or another provider, we'll see how that goes. Pardon, I got a little bit of a system thing going on my computer. Sorry about that.
Oops.
And so I recognize that, like, the coordination, you just mentioned it, you nailed it, Bob. The communication is key. And so making sure that we've got, what the blockchain is able to do is to quickly and easily sort of spin up an independent system of record that could be key to providing sort of quicker and more effective help for people affected by an emergency by knowing what assets are where and what resources are needed to get them to where they will best make a difference. And so you don't have that redundancy. Inside a blockchain network, you don't have double spends, you don't have, counterfeiting, you don't have, misallocation of resources.
Mm-hmm.
You have A needs to go to B, and that's where it goes. There is no deviation from human error that goes, well, I think what we ought to do is maybe go a different way. It becomes those integrators, those first responders, those law enforcement, fire, National Guard, and other, nonprofit, church, et cetera, assets that are all working together to realize, hey, if we've got one record that we're all working off of, we can best get the right resources to the right place at the right time.
So you're talking about somebody that's making a decision on the spot. It's not going through a bunch of, well, if we do this, or, we could do that, or what do you think, Joe? And Joe says, wait a minute, I got to finish my beer.
Right, exactly. And the challenge is that you have that way too often. Again, I can't personally relate to the most recent catastrophic, disasters that have hit the United States. Mm-hmm. I can talk about, what it is to be in a tsunami in Bangladesh. I can talk about what it is to be in to be part of the relief effort that's there and be a spokesman for the relief effort there in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we experienced that were incredibly frustrating as citizen soldiers, some of whom are college students, some of whom are police officers, some of whom are, from all walks of life, mobilized to support this, is the lack of decision-making that was happening on the ground. We had resources that were sitting in stockpiles that were going bad because no one could make a decision to get it from A to B. We got people serving here.
Exactly. Now you hit it on the nose. All of this stuff is all over the place. Look, I mean, you can agree with me or not, but we have enough food in America to feed almost the whole world.
Yes, sir. I agree with you 100%.
Almost the whole world. Where the heck, and I'm really, really being nice when I say that, where the heck is it when these people have zero? They have zero. I mean, we watched this on TV when it happened, And I mean, we got the back here in the green room, and we got a huge TV in there, and we're watching this thing, and I mean, you could see houses go right. I mean, the house went across the street.
Right.
So in other words, these people have zero. They have nothing. And whatever they have in the bank, what's it going to last? A couple of weeks? I mean, seriously.
So let me give you a little snapshot of an example of what I think is recognizing the challenge. And of course, I'm a big advocate for veterans and veterans involvement in post-service life. In January of 2010, we had a 7.0 earthquake hit Port-au-Prince in Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally caused one of the most dire humanitarian catastrophes of all time. And within 24 hours, you had 20 nations, non-governmental organizations, totally mobilized to get on the move. Jake Wood and his founding partner were a couple military veterans that I'm just going to boast on a veteran organization for a minute that I'm only loosely associated with.
Absolutely.
And they were volunteering. They said, "Hey man, I got skills. I'm a combat veteran Marine. Hey, I'm a combat veteran engineer. I'm a combat veteran medic. I'm a combat veteran. Let's go down and help." And no organization could get them organized in a way to get down there. They said, "Hey, we appreciate you wanting to help," but they finally decided they put what they could in their duffel bags and they bought their own tickets and went down there. They got on the ground and started work. That was the foundation of Team Rubicon. Team Rubicon right now is one of the most effective veteran organizations in the world, and they literally are now partnered with not just veterans, but those who want to support and help veterans, so that it's a very inclusive organization. And they literally are sort of subdivided into the 10 FEMA regions. They've got different regions across the United States so that you can have veterans that are trained to live in the most austere conditions imaginable, that really are there for, every combat veteran will tell you the same thing. When you are in a disaster situation, when you're in a combat environment, you're not there, honestly, for God and country. You are there for the person on your right and your left.
Right.
And so when you get there on the ground, that's what they're good at. That's what Team Rubicon is really an example of. So, you really sort of figured out that the collaboration, they just figured veterans had that mindfulness to realize, and Jake, God bless him, his decision-making was incredible. Hey, look, we can do a better job than this, and let's just get past those bureaucracies. And it goes again to that Sustainable Development Goal 17, partnership. He's figured out so many, and his organization, Team Rubicon, again, has figured out so many different partnerships that they're one of the most effectively run, effectively managed, and global impactful veterans organizations I can think of.
Again, it's communication and decisions. They make decisions. They're passionate about humanity, and they're passionate with their hearts for what they're doing.
Yeah.
They have a passion for what they're doing. That right there. They definitely did better than anybody out there. You know what? This is another thing, too, that gets me all the time, and I see it in everything I read. It's all money.
Well, indeed, sir. That is ultimately, we're going to deploy financial resources or the resources of state, the resources that are privately held, et cetera. And I think that by using blockchain applications, just let's look at identity. When people, especially the poor and the underbanked and those that are the underserved, when disaster hits them, they lose not just everything that they own, but a lot of their identity, a lot of their, record. They don't have a digital asset. When you look at blockchain applications to keep identity records,
yes,
individuals could build their records over time across borders as a form of identity. It sort of enables them to remove the need for individuals to depend on some centralized authority like a government or a bank to verify their identity. Let's just, as an example, I am Arnold Strong, social security number X, blood positive, O positive blood type, credit score of this, DD-214 record of this. I've got all my stuff that is my personally identifiable information. Once that becomes a block of verified, certified information upon the blockchain, we can remove all that PII, all that personally identifiable information from that, and that becomes a validated piece of truth. So we don't have the risk of me getting spammed, me getting counterfeited, me getting duplicated, me having people, because that is a validated piece of information that the thing can say, oh, Arnold Strong is this person that he says he is.
I'm going to run something by you, and I'm going to whiz it by you, really.
Sure.
What about HIPAA?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, exactly. We'll reframe that a little bit.
All right. Take everything about you, everything about you personally, medically, the whole nine yards, is in a HIPAA report about you under your Social Security number. So therefore, every single thing that you just discussed is in that HIPAA report.
Yes.
That's why they're so worried about anybody touching the report, and doctors are getting hacked, and getting information and everything else, because it is like Bob Charles, okay? If you get a report, you can see more about me than Facebook, Twitter, or anything else. Or
Right.
just by getting into that one report. And that one report is a government record. It's not mine, it's not the doctors, it just is added to this soup pot of information that the entire nation is emptied into.
Yeah, so I mean, right now, one of the core fundamentals about blockchain is literally the anonymization and release of centralized authority and having decentralized control. It's not the way it gets spun by many of those that doubt the technology, but more as giving the individual person, the individual country, the individual state, the individual municipality, much more sovereign control over its identity and its information, such that when we talk about HIPAA records, those are not anonymized. Right now, we could solve a lot of problems in the world if we had the ability to control and own our own information about ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's DNA information, whether that be our credit history, whether that be our life story, our record of where we went to school, et cetera. If you can own that information yourself and then tokenize that and recognize that people can actually, if they want to be part of a study, they can authorize certain people to have access to their information and not others. Case in point, look at the dominant medium on social media, which shall remain nameless, and look at the legal challenges that they are going through right now because they have not anonymized that data. Right. They have sent that data to anyone that is the highest bidder. And that's why we get all these hacks. That's why we get all this loss of information. That's why every 5 minutes I get a phone call from an organization that I've never had any tie to whatsoever that wants to talk to me about something that I knew nothing about because that information has been let loose upon the internet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I know exactly. But first of all, when you go and get your driver's license, that's it. You've had it right there.
Yeah,
because everything about you is connected to it.
Yeah. So if there's a way to just bulletize that into a single talking point, I would tell you that blockchain can offer full transparency and accounting with no human intervention or paperwork needed. You can literally just have that full transparency clear so that you've got a totally anonymized record of truth. We call about this we're not stepping into a blockchain era. We're really stepping into an era of truth.
All right, so let's define this a little bit further. Blockchain. Tell us about it. What is it? How do we use it? How can we use it? Or is it usable?
Well, right now, very fortunately, you're reaching me. I'm in one of the quietest spots in the Los Angeles Convention Center right now. I found a small room that I was able to set aside in the back because we're literally right now, there is the Crypto Invest Summit going on where there's 5,000 people outside those doors that are literally looking at and hearing presentations. There's a pitch fest going on. There's a lot of investors in the room, listening to different solutions and different understandings of all this. Blockchain, of course, started with the Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever that person or persons we believe is or was, which is the Bitcoin white paper. The Bitcoin white paper basically, Bitcoin is the currency, whereas blockchain is ultimately a distributed database that enables that sort of, like I said, that truth ledger effect to come into place. It really, what that does is it decentralizes control of information. And so what that does is it enables there to be, if you're Bob and I'm Arnold and you're selling a property and I'm buying a property, once we become that validated block of information, as I mentioned, that you are this person, it removes the need for escrow, it removes the need for agency, it removes the need for all those middle players to take yet another slice of that pie, so that instead of paying $250,000 amortized over 30 years for a house, I'm paying $285,000 amortized over that 30 years, which with costs implied everywhere to all these little middle players that are basically validating that I really am who I say I am. If we can remove that and we can actually have that validated truth, then you can see that there becomes a much lesser cost to transaction, be that corporate transaction, be that, a buying food, be that buying a home, be that sending money to your church, sending money to your favorite nonprofit. There's a way to incentivize change, which we call tokenizing behavior. Right now, we're working on a project with one organization that literally is working on incentivizing kids to collect plastic and to turn that plastic in. And by doing so, it offsets their cost of school lunches. What do? They see trash now, they pick that up. What does that then do? The plastic that gets collected, and that then gets turned back into usable fuel. So then just thrown into a dump, which ends up doing nothing to, rehabilitate the environment that we're living in. We literally can use and reuse some of the stuff that we throw away on a daily basis, but more importantly, we can tokenize and incentivize behavior for we really believe that the children of the future, because, I'm a 50-year-old retired Army Colonel Airborne Ranger. It's like I got a second half of my life ahead of me, but, I'm sort of like I'm an old dog and I'm learning these new tricks, but it goes back to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. It's like teach your parents well. I'm listening an awful lot of my lessons I'm learning from young people these days.
Well, I'm a little bit older than you are, and I've seen not there, but I've seen the Vietnam era. So I'm definitely been there, did that, one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that Unify Earth plans to do to help those in need throughout the Panhandle of Florida, Georgia? Continued efforts in the
well, right now, I think that the key thing is that we're 6 months into market. We're forming. We've already got 19 critical partners that we've already signed and organized and collaborated formalized our partnership with. Some of those are for transaction. Some of those are for education. Some of those are for. I'll give you Tom Root's Hop Sports as an example, where literally he impacts at this time already over the last 20, 30 years as he's been doing this, he impacts 4 million children's lives across the globe on a daily basis. Just if you can imagine a trailer, a tokenized, what do you call those trailers? I used to live on a Connex trailer that goes on the back of a truck. Imagine that being filled in a very organized manner with athletic equipment and athletic gear and training systems inside there. And Arnold Strong, who is an NCAA certified coach in 3 sports, goes with this trailer to Ghana or to Nairobi, Kenya, or to Nepal or what have you. Shows up with all of this equipment and teaches kids not only the athletics that come inside that, but also this taking brain breaks, which is literally just like resetting some of their behavior, taking some time to what we'd call meditation in some channels. We're just taking some quiet time, etc. We found that the result that Tom has on those 4 million kids on a daily basis is improving kids' lives exponentially. Their basic philosophy is children plus athletics equals peace. You give the kid a cricket bat, he's not going to pick up an AK. That's one example of what we're already doing. But so in this environment, I think that what the blockchain and what the Unify Earth blockchain 3.0 platform ultimately represents is like I said, a distributed database that ultimately enables supply chains to not really be strangers to crises like natural disasters, like floods, like hurricanes, disrupting operations from time to time. When we've got technological development that's proving useful to supply chains, in situations like blockchain, the same technology behind digital currencies like Bitcoin. You got blockchain as a digital ledger that records transactions in an unalterable and chronological record. It makes use of autonomous computer systems and computer networks to verify those updates on a ledger on an ongoing basis. You have an immutable record of truth. And so the faster you can get that truth to make a difference on the ground, the faster we can actually mitigate those kind of consequences in the future.
Actually, you got something going there that I was thinking about too. When many years ago, and that I was I did some work with ambulances, and when we would pick up someone we would radio all the information about the patient to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, a plan was already made, and they already knew what was going to happen to the patient. This would be the same thing in any situation. The situation would be that someone would know what the situation was, where it was, how it was, who or what, the who, what, when, where, how, and why of the situation, and be able to have the plan of what they were going to do before they even got there. And then enable everyone to just go and do it. So what you're talking about is a finger-snapping information chain.
Yeah, and if we use the technological tool, it goes to what you're talking about. There really is no need, I mean, for people to be missing food in this country. I mean, there's really no need for that to take place. Literally, I'll turn it back to our alignment with, like that little pin that I'm wearing there is the image of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that, again, 194 countries around the planet have agreed that these are the goals that we can all align around to meet by 2030. The number one is no poverty. There literally is no necessity. There is more wealth and more resources and more food and more capacity on this planet to provide for every single human being, animal, etc. on this planet. There is no need for people to be poor. There really isn't.
Thank you for saying what I've been saying. Yeah,
it really is no need. And if you go through that and I would encourage your listeners to go out and look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, 17 SDGs as they're called. But really, when we come to your point about just being that ledger and that instantaneous decision-making cycle that we talk about, blockchain boasts the advantage of not being controlled by a single entity. So what that means is that you remove the concerns about accountability and disclosure. So when natural disasters, strike home, blockchain makes sure that competing players have to cooperate with one another in sharing resources and assets rather than acting in some way that is the bad side of capitalism. Note that I'm saying the bad side. I don't think that capitalism is a bad thing. I think that we really believe in 3 Ps. We believe in people, we believe in profit, we believe in planet. We really recognize that you can make money doing good. You just don't have to make like billions of dollars when you can make millions of dollars and make sure that other people are getting incentivized and rewarded along the way so that you can make a profit, you can share that profit, you can benefit your community, you can incentivize people's behavior so that they take better care of themselves, you can reward that in an entire cycle so that's really the transparency eliminates price gouging, it eliminates rewards, and it rewards those who actually are operating ethically.
When you talk about things like that, it's really, really funny when you said about the food. In my family, that I have somebody that was head or CEO of a very large restaurant chain, and he said that if we took the food that we throw out, just the food that we throw out.
Yes, sir.
Now he's talking about all restaurants anywhere in the whole United States. He said we could feed everyone that doesn't have the food for a week,
right?
For one night, one day. Right.
Oh, the other day I threw out some corn, and I felt like such a schlub because, like, I had, I was sitting there. It was in my my bin, and the top ends of it had, some decay on it, and I just thought I threw them all out, and I felt bad about it because I was like, I could have just cut off the edges, and I still could have had some great corn. Literally, 40% of food is thrown away.
That's right.
40%.
That's right.
40% of food is thrown away. And that includes not just restaurant prepared food at the end of the day, that includes just 40% of the food we grow, we buy in grocery stores, we bring home to our children, 40% of it is thrown away.
Let's talk about food, though, for 1 second. And maybe you can shed some light on this. What's the difference? All right. In I don't care whose idea it is, but GMO food and organic food. Now, GMO food, they just sued about that thing in California about poison that's causing cancer in food sprayed by these chemicals that are going on. Now you got organic food that aren't sprayed by anything. They're healthy food. But most of the food that's out there on the shelves are GMO food. They came from grains and everything else that was sprayed, the poisons, and now we're eating them. A lot of people say, no, they weren't sprayed. But you know what? between so many different sprays that are going on all over this planet, plus all the things that are going into our ground, are going into our aquifers, are going into our bodies by just, they say spring water, it's bottled and everything else, but really, what's really in that spring water? When we're talking about food and feeling, everybody, how about the planet that's killing itself for money? For money.
There is another topic for another radio show that I'd love to not just be a part of, but also invite my chief executive officer, Bo Rinaldi. I'm just going to boast on my boss for a second. Bo has been a food, not just expert, but ultimately someone who is recognized. He cured himself at 12 of several, things that were told to be incurable by shifting to a completely vegan diet. He's been a big vegan activist for a very long time, and a really sort of ethically harvested and sustained food expert for a long time.
Yep.
He's just been a real expert on that. He can talk about this in great detail, but I will tell you that what you just mapped out is absolutely true. I mean, I just read an article yesterday that there are microplastics in iodized salt.
Yes.
There's like Morton's table salt.
Yep.
I mean, there's so much plastic everywhere in the world coming in from those places that we harvest salt from, whether it be seaweed or it be like the ocean or it be like salt beds or whatever. It's like because there's so much plastic in the environment. We're eating plastic all the time. Yep. And it's not just the imagery we see in the occasional video that we see that goes viral of animals swimming in plastic. It is that we are consuming these plastics on a daily basis, and we've got to find a better way. I'll close this on a positive.
Well, before you start that, there's one more when he's talking about that, okay?
Yeah.
There's another one. You can ask him about this, and he'll probably go ballistic. Right. Fluoride in water.
Wait.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what do we put in our food? Water. I mean, seriously. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to kill myself just for one. I'm going to make sure I'm dead. Yeah. I mean, it's like, you definitely keep in touch because I'd like you all on.
I tell you, this was not. I was so happy to have this interview with you. I'm just like what a great conversation. And I will tell you very briefly, your background is very rewarding to me because I was a child when King Tutankhamun, his remains first toured the United States. I was 9 years old. My mom had to.
I remember that.
Yeah, my mom had to pull me from Tutankhamun's death mask. There was recently a tour here in Los Angeles, King Tut. The Treasures of King Tut is here back again. I took my fiance there, and we went and saw it with my son, and it was breathtaking to see. But when I was a peacekeeper, I was a captain in Egypt in 1996. I got to go link up with, believe it or not, my church group in Cairo, and we did a tour down the Nile. But the night before I linked up with them, a guy that worked at the peacekeeping station where we were, this guy had been a professor of mathematics. Mm-hmm. He made more money operating a till for peacekeeping, 11 Nations for Peace in Sinai, Egypt, than he did as a professor of mathematics. Arnold, that would be $4.79. He made twice as much money doing that than he did teaching mathematics. So really good guy, Raouf. I landed in Cairo. He picked me up. He said, Arnold, what do you want to do? I said, I got to go tour the pyramids. And so he took me right there, your background. He says, you would like to ride a horse? I am terrified of horse. I will ride in a carriage. And so he got in a carriage. I rode a horse. Felt like Indiana Jones. I got to ride a horse all around those pyramids behind you right there. And I just love seeing that that Pyramid One network background. It really warms my heart, brother.
I mean, this is what we do. We're here to educate the world. The only thing that's going to wake people up is information. That's why I'm passionate about communication. We are at one point now, we've been measured to be in 132 countries. Because this is not, look, when you're on a radio station, you can go 20 miles. And then you have to syndicate to another radio station that's got another 20 miles or 30 miles. And that's how it goes. And each one of them make money with each one of those little skips they make, like $500 an hour or whatever they charge and other things, plus sponsors and everything else. This is anybody that's got TuneIn, Streama, or our regular click-on in their cell phone anywhere on this planet. We even have a studio in Australia.
Beautiful.
So we've got somebody that takes care of the lower end of the hemisphere, And we're on the upper side. The other studio is in Texas. So there's nobody nowhere. I mean, we got kids that actually rent time on computers in Moscow that write me every once in a while that they heard this show or that show. So they got like 15, 20 people in a room. They throw a bunch of money on a computer in a cafe somewhere, and they listen to the show.
That's awesome. I will. So since we're coming up on time, I will tell your listeners, if you want to learn more, go to unified.earth. It's a secure site, HTTPS, ://unified.earth. We've got, like, right off the bat, you'll see, this is a print version of it, but we literally just published our book called Intelligent Communities in the Future. And it really is sort of our map for how the municipal environment of the city is ultimately sort of ideally situated for, like, using smart contracts, using the blockchain to deliver the proper services, et cetera, to the right people at the right time. We call it a framework for a new civilization. Go to unified.earth, set up your unified.earth wallet. That's going to become not just a token wallet, but also a streaming platform. Who knows, we might be able to figure out how to get Pyramid One Network streamed into that wallet as well. And it's just been a real blessing to be on your show, Bob. I so appreciate the time.
If you guys do talks anywhere, in front of anyone, just like you're talking right now through your laptop, all you have to do is take your laptop, turn it around toward the audience that you're talking to, and half of it on yourself, and we can stream you live.
Yeah.
So you could have one person in the room and have 50,000 listening. So
the last thing you said about the hopefulness of the future, in our book, one of the things that I mentioned in a conference call, and then my partner Chris Van Buren, our marketing director, he actually said, "Can you repeat that?" And that's actually the sort of the front piece or dedication in our book. Is we really think we're at a tipping point where, we can either live in a Philip K. Dick, Blade Runner, do androids dream of electric sheep type future where everything is scarcity and technology is something to be afraid of, and the future is very bleak, or a Gene Roddenberry Star Trek type future, which is technology is our friend, and we can truly get past this enmity that exists between nations, and we can align as a planet, and we can truly become intergalactic beings like we're supposed to be. And we really think that we're leaning more towards that latter than the former. We just know that it's going to take a lot of work.
And there's a lot to be said, too, because we have things that nations' security, in a sense. We have, come on, Europe is a mess. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, I see the thing between Iraq, or Iran, Syria, Pakistan, and, it just keeps going and going and going. People going over each other's borders, killing people left and right. That's what happens when each one of the individual countries don't do the best they possibly can, because I know some of them over there, I've had friends of mine that came back from over there and said, Bob, they got no brains. I said, okay, whatever. But, in a sense now, we've got, in other words, we should protect ourselves and give at the same time. I know it's hard to do. It really, really is. But
collaboration instead of competition is definitely the way forward.
Bingo. Yeah. That's it. I mean, personally speaking, I think that everybody should have the opportunity to something that's going to make them better, their families better, their children better, education better, food, talking about that, better.
Yeah.
All these things are at the tips of our fingers. All we have to do is communicate with each other, get a plan down, and make it work.
Well, Bob, again, we're Unify Earth Network. We're at unified.earth, and our motto is humanizing the blockchain. It has been a real, real pleasure to be on your show.
Well, there you go. And you got a speech, I think, to do out there, right?
We're getting ready. We literally got to be back on in about 10 minutes, so thank you so much.
There you go. I want to let you go now, and thank you very much for being on the show. It's been an honor to have you, and we'll have to talk.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for your diligence and your research and everything. I really appreciate it. And whatever crew you've got as a team, thank you for them supporting you, because this is a great, great, great team that you got here, because this is awesome.
They're awesome. Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
Good night.
Now, to everybody out there that's listening right now, every single thing that the Colonel